Morning, everybody.
Morning.
Morning.
Oh, it's went off. Oh, the pictures just went off again.
Well, I make that 9 o'clock, everybody. So, and I'm getting a bit of reverb there. I don't know if anyone else is hearing that. No. Okay. Well, it's 9 o'clock, so if we could just start the meeting. So, good morning, welcome to the Tayside Valuation Joint Board. It's going to be recorded. We know the drill, so I think we'll just crack on. Elaine, if you could take us through, please.
Thank you, Convener. First of all, I'll take a roll call for the minute. If members could confirm their presence when I call their name. Convener.
Present.
Bailey Roberts. And Mark is absent. Councillor Short. I'll also mark as absent. Councillor Scullin.
Present.
Thank you. Apologies have been put in for Councillor Shears. Bailey McPherson.
Good morning, present.
Councillor Cowdy.
Present.
Councillor Durno.
Present.
Received apologies for Councillor Meehan. Councillor Shepherd.
Present.
Councillor McCall. And Mark is absent. Bailey Williamson is also absent. Received apologies for Councillor Anderson. Councillor Smith.
Present.
And Councillor Cuthbert.
Present.
Thank you. And that concludes the roll call.
Thank you, Elaine. I see Bailey Roberts is now on the meeting. Good morning, Christina.
Morning. Sorry, I went to say good morning and my computer just suddenly closed down again.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
Thank
Elaine,
you.
next item, please.
Item 2, declaration of interest. Are there any declarations to the agenda as it stands? No declarations, which takes us to item 3, minute of the meeting for the 20th of November 2023 for noting.
Okay, I hope you've all had a chance to look at the minutes and are they agreed? I see a lot of nodding, so thank you very much. Elaine, please.
Item 4 is Electoral Registration Elections Act 2022, and this is for noting.
Okay, thank you. Roy, would you like to introduce us to this report, please?
Yes, following on from previous reports, this is just the latest change that's implemented by the Elections Act. This change is in relation to overseas voters. So this is now enforced from 16th of January. So there used to be a 15-year limit on voting rights for British citizens living overseas. That's now been removed. So as long as an overseas elector can prove they were registered at a UK address previously, or they lived at a UK address, then they'll have the right to apply for an overseas vote, and there's no time limit on that anymore. The Electoral registration portal is now expanded to allow applications online for overseas voters. As far as public awareness is concerned, we've put out a message on Twitter. The Electoral Commission has its own plans, and we will piggyback on that as they develop those to promote this new rule. And that's basically the report.
Thank you, Roy. Does anyone have any questions or comments on that? I see Councillor McCall has a hand raised. Councillor McCall.
Good morning, thank you. I'm just curious if we have any sort of stats on
numbers that might be eligible to vote now in UK elections in the Tayside area?
Right. Is this for overseas, you mean? Sorry, did you mean that for overseas as a result of the change
Yes.
of this act? Yeah. Now, I can get you Tayside stats. I don't have those. What we know is that it's estimated that across the UK, there could be as many as between 2 and 3 million people living abroad that actually are eligible to vote, overseas electors. I believe at a previous election, there were actually 900,000 registered, took the opportunity, so you can see it wasn't everyone. So how many will come forward now is a complete unknown. I'm sorry I don't have an estimate for Tayside at the moment, but I can look into that for you and get back to you after the meeting if you would like. But that's the UK position. There are many, maybe up as much as 2 million people that weren't registered before that could now register.
Yeah, I'm just curious, Roy. I just like numbers. So if you have it, great. But I mean, I wouldn't spend a huge amount of time on it.
Okay.
I know you're winding down a bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's the UK
but it'd be
position.
interesting to know, just from as we move forward closer to an election, to try and understand, even just for capacity, if nothing else, for councils.
Yeah,
or for returning officers, rather. Sorry.
Yeah, in the first few days after this is launched, there were 11 applications, so slow uptake at the moment. Yeah, 11 for Tayside. There's some stats.
All right, okay.
But in the run-up to an election, well, of course, you would expect that to increase exponentially. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there'll probably be more than 2 million.
So it's just an estimate.
Yeah, no,
no
I'm
one
just,
can really know. Yeah,
I know, but just thinking about the number of people who felt that some of their voting rights might be taken away post-Brexit, just in Europe alone, never mind in the rest of the world. So, gosh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor McCulloch. Councillor Cowdy, you were looking to come in.
Thank you. Sorry about the noise behind me. I have a delivery van running outside my house. I really just wanted to just double check, because it's been asked of me. I see that it says UK parliamentary elections, so it's not Scottish parliamentary elections, but also I just wanted to clarify, or at least get it sort of noted, that it's not local council, UK local council elections that this applies to, because we obviously have a by-election upcoming really quite soon, and people might ask us that in our ward in Angus.
Yeah, so that's my understanding. It's always been the case that it was UK parliamentary, so that's not changed. It's just as it always was, so that doesn't affect anything that way, if that helps.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Roy. And with that, is that report noted? Thank you. Elaine, please.
Item 5, internal audit, and this is for Nota.
Okay, Roy, would you like to introduce this for us, please?
Yes, it really just sets out the internal audit plan for the next few months for the remainder of this financial year. Internal audit has already kicked off, but the 3 remaining things that require to be done before the end of the year, as you can see at 5.2, are corporate governance, non-domestic rates, and follow-up reviews. The follow-up reviews will effectively follow up on things that I've been asked to do previously to check if I've done them. So those are just the 3 things that are coming up in the run-up to the end of this financial year.
Thank you, Roy. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Roy on that item? I'll give you a little second, but I'm not seeing any. So with that, then, is that report noted? Thank you. Elaine, if you could take us on to the next item, please.
6 is revenue monitoring for 8 months to 30th November 2023, and this is for Nota.
Now, I think Paul Thompson might be taking us through this one if he's here.
Myself, Matthew, is taking it as Paul is not able to attend.
Okay, morning, Matthew.
Morning. So the revenue monitoring for 8 months to the from 30th November is showing a £15,000 overspend for year end. This is despite quite large savings within staffing through the year, and unfortunately reduces the reserves of the valuation board to just 13,000, none of which relate to Barclays, so they're unrestricted. I don't have any questions regarding the monitoring report.
I'll put that out to the floor. Councillor McCall has a question or comment. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you. In terms of the reserves, how does that number reflect what our policy is around reserves?
The Treasurer's recommendation is that reserves shouldn't be below 60,000. Also 13,000 is below that. But within the budget report coming up next, in next year's budget, we're looking for a one-off contribution from the councils to take the reserves back to the 60,000 minimum as recommended.
Okay, thank you.
And no, sorry, I'm trying to understand why this has got to such a point in a wee bit more detail, please. Yeah,
so the reserves, also we had our general reserve, and within that was also the Barclays reserve that we had.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, the Barclays funding, as it was set up a few years ago, prior to Royals being in the post, was laid out what we'd expect to receive regarding staffing, networks, any other things we do on behalf of the Barclays Revue. That funding's been held for the last couple of years, and we're budgeting that'll happen again. So that's why the Barclays reserve's been used up, as we no longer receive the funding that we previously expected to receive for that to cover the costs. We've had to pick up the shortfall there. As well as that, the other reserves have been used up largely due to staff. Well, staff costs have. So I'm jumping onto the budget here, but in terms of this year, the general reserve got used up more by the property. We had higher utility bills than expected through electric, so that used up more of the reserves than we expected. There was also some one-off charges regarding the computer network. I don't know if Roy could find more information on the supplies and services or overspends. But that's what's put us over budget for this year. And in general, it's just funding levels are made more consistent than what we would require.
So, I mean, I know you've got some of this in the report, but it's just, it doesn't give the breakdown of the figures to contributing. At least I can't see it. Is that bit in brackets at the side? Yes, it could be. I'm just wondering how much of that is recurring, because utility costs I don't think are going to come down substantially. Or am I going into the budget thing here?
Yeah, that's sort of a crossover.
Well, you can pick up in the budget thing. I'm concerned about
that,
I'm concerned about the Barclays reserves, because I seem to recall we had a discussion about this before we started incurring those particular costs, and I think we were given, well, certainly I felt we were given some assurance that there would be sufficient funding to cover the cost of that.
The Barclays reserve will cover. It'll be used in full this year. It was budgeted to use the majority of the reserve, but unfortunately the full 31,000 remaining will be used, which also is a knock on to the budget next year. And this year we're having to pick up some additional Barclays charges that that now exceed that budget.
Okay.
The knock on to that within the Barclays there, also the Barclays funding does cover some staff positions. The pay award was obviously a lot greater than what was budgeted last year, so that's why the Barclays fund ended up getting used in full this year.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor McCall. And with that then, is that report noted? Thank you. And Elaine, if you take us on to the next item, please.
Convener, item 7, revenue budget 2024-25 to 2028-29.
Okay. Back to you then, Matthew.
Okay, so the 24-25 budget does show an increase in the requisition that is required from councils, and that is largely due to the cost of staff. That's despite us increasing the slippage and removing a post, obviously a restructure being carried out there, but the staffing costs still have gone up considerably. It also includes a one-off charge to councils, as I just mentioned, to increase the reserves back to 60,000, which is the Treasurer recommended level. And yeah, it does take into account, as I mentioned there, increases we've seen in electric costs, but also in postage costs, which are recurring costs we don't expect to drop off.
Okay, thank you. I see Billy McPherson has a question for you.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. In fact, in a way, the question I've got is around what actually Councillor McCall mentioned in relation to the other item, because obviously at 4.2 in here, we have the point about reserves and balances. The situation around back was a little bit concerning, if I'm being perfectly honest. But my main point is this, that a 4.22 indicates that the Treasurer considers the minimum level for uncommitted balances should operate at 2% of net expenditure, which I think is a perfectly reasonable proposition. My concern, I suppose, is the fact that at the end of the March of last year, it dropped to 29,000. And it's now projected to drop to as little as 13,000, which I would consider, frankly, quite a worryingly low level of balances, and one that we should never really get to. Now, Matthew has correctly said that, you know, obviously the recommendation, which I think we would all be very wise to agree to, is to bring that back to 60,000 for the new financial year. However, I suppose my question and my point in a way is, should we not, as a matter of course, be ensuring that at the end of each and every financial year, we get back to the level of balance that the Treasurer recommends, i.e. 2% of net expenditure? Because getting to a situation, frankly, essentially it was left at the end of the last financial year. And I just feel that we shouldn't, say, for example, it drops below 60,000 during the 24-25 financial year. I don't think we should just leave it at the 31st of March 2025, if you follow my drift. And should it not be the case that we agree that henceforth we will aim at the start of each financial year to ensure that our reserves are brought back to 2% of net expenditure?
Well, let's see. Mr. Emmett wishes to come in on that one, Robert.
Thank you, convener, and thank you, Barry McPherson. I mean, I think you raise an important point. I think there's a balance here to be struck with the valuation board not sitting on reserves that it doesn't need and ensuring they're at appropriate level. What's brought forward in this item is to make sure the balances are restored. And I think if the committee is comfortable, what I would suggest is that we look in the course of this year about how we might manage that process to ensure that we're not in a position where we don't have sufficient resources to meet any unplanned expenditure. The valuation board has been well managed, so that, you know, it's not a service where there should be significant unexpected expenditure, and we should be able to plan for that. But I think I'm happy that we have perhaps do a little bit more work on that and making sure that committee members are satisfied that we have got adequate reserves in place, and including it in the budget on this occasion was a first step in doing that. Convener Barry McPherson.
Okay, thanks for that. That's very helpful. I personally feel that we should ensure at the end of, or at the start of each financial year, that we've got sufficient reserves to see us through that year. And in terms of income that you, if you like, don't need, the amounts we're talking about in the scale of local government are tiny. I mean, a 60,000 reserve, when I think of, like, well, I'm also on the Tay Road Bridge Joint, I'm vice chair of the Tay Road Bridge Joint Board. We're concerned about the depleting reserves, but we're into the hundreds of thousands there. We're you know, it's a completely different ball game, and I just feel that a 60,000 or 2% of net expenditure reserve is a perfectly reasonable and not outlandish position to be in. So I'm grateful to Mr. Emmett for his reply. Thank you.
Thank you, Bailey McPherson. And noting Mr. Emmett's comments, can we agree this report? Thank you very much. Elaine, back to you, please.
Item 8 is review of scheme of flexible working hours, and this is for approval.
Okay, Roy, would you like to introduce this for us, please?
Yes, the existing flexible working scheme has been in place for quite a number of years in Tayside Valuation Joint Board. I took the opportunity to review this recently, and basically it's been reviewed to give employees further flexibility over their working hours. It supports them better to balance work and personal commitments. And what I've found is if you support staff in their personal life and what they do, they will work very hard for you in return, and especially when the chips are down, when the going gets tough, they will pull out all the stops for you. So this is an investment in that. So basically, I won't go over the whole policy, but the main changes include an extension to start and finish times, so the flexibility of us starting a little bit earlier or possibly finishing a little bit later. There's an increase in the credit hours they can carry forward each 4-week period, and there's an increase in the flexi leave which they can take over the course of a year. And that's basically the report.
Thank you, Roy. Bailey McPherson, you have a question.
Thanks, Convener. I've had a review, or I've had a read through the amended policy. I don't think there's anything in it that's particularly unreasonable. However, what I was a little bit surprised about was the information in 5.2, because it was like changes include. Now, to my mind, if you're seeking approval for something, you list the before position and the after position and allow members of the committee to make a determination as to whether or not the change is reasonable. I think what we've been given is a bit of an overview of some of the changes, and I'm not sure that sort of cuts the mustard in what should really be in a committee report. I think we should have really been told, well, it's currently X and it's going to be Y. And we can't really work it out from this because we've been given a copy of the new policy, but not the old policy. So, as I say, I'm not suggesting for a moment we don't approve this, because I've read through the actual policy and there's nothing outlandish or unreasonable in it. But could I perhaps maybe ask if Mr. Christie or one of his team could perhaps just email round the Valuation Joint Board members after this, effectively going through each change. In other words, it's currently X and it's going to be Y. I'm not suggesting in a way, as I say, that we hold this up, but I do feel that in committee reports, we shouldn't be getting a sort of overview of some of the, some of the changes include, well, that doesn't really, to my mind, cut the mustard. What we really need is, here's the changes, A, B, C, D, and E. This is it before and this is it after. And I think maybe the way of getting around this would be if there was an email follow-up, just basically going through each of the changes, so that we're aware as to what was the position before and what will be the position after.
Thank you, Bailey McPherson. I'm going to bring in another couple of questions, Roy, before you address that, as they may well be related. So I'm going to bring in Councillor Durno first.
Thanks, Kevin. Mine's is not actually a comment more than a question. So I'll just wait on for a minute.
Okay, Councillor Cowdy.
Thank you. Yeah, mine does relate to Bailey McPherson's point, which I agree with. I just wondered if, for ease of time, maybe both versions of the papers could be circulated in that email and then highlighting the relevant parts that are changing. If there's a way of doing that makes it obvious, just rather than writing all out, again. But I agree that it would be really handy to see a before and after in a way that's really easily digestible.
Okay, thank you. I'll let Roy in to address that and then let Councillor Durno back in.
Yes, that's no problem. I can circulate that after the meeting if that would be helpful.
Okay. Thank you, Roy. I think that would be a lot of nodding heads, so thank you. Councillor Durno.
I just like to say that I think that this is brilliant, and I absolutely wish that we'd had this 20 years ago when I was a working mum. It makes things so much easier for people, flexi time. They can work what's easier for themselves and their children. So thank you very much for bringing this report to us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Durno. And I'm sure Roy will welcome those positive comments from yourself. Councillor McCall, you wish to come in?
Yeah, just a comment, actually. I'd just be curious to know how this might impact on staff retention going forward and whether or not it will improve that. So it's maybe just something to monitor. I don't expect an answer to this. It's just a comment. Thank you.
I can give you one, though. In my opinion, I would think it would improve it because it's now one of the best schemes out there. And there's a lot of competition amongst assessors' offices for staff right now. So I would think it could only help with that.
And that's my instinct as well, Mr. Christie. I'm just curious to know if we'll monitor that and see if it's a contributory factor, and also about staff attraction, which is sometimes equally as difficult as staff retention. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Cullen. Thank you for your reply, Roy. And with that, can that item be approved? Thank you very much. Back to you, Elaine, please.
Thank you. Item 9 is the date of the next meeting, which is 17th of June 2024. And that concludes the public part of the agenda.
Thank you. So for the confidential part of the agenda, we would look to have the press and public leave the meeting. I'm not actually sure if there are any press or public in this. Elaine, if you could just double check for us that everyone who's meant to be in the meeting remains in the meeting, please.